I'm Sadie, 36, female, and I accidentally gave my husband permission to go on a romantic getaway with his mistress. I suggested a hall pass to spice up our 10-year marriage since my pilot husband was always traveling for work, but when I got suspicious and secretly followed, I discovered he was already having a 6-month affair with his coworker. They had been planning this entire trip together while laughing about how stupid I was to give them the green light. So I gathered my evidence and planned an unforgettable welcome home party. The silence in our house had a weight to it. It wasn't a peaceful quiet, it was a heavy, cavernous echo that swallowed sounds and reminded me I was alone. I'm a freelance graphic designer, so my work-from-home life meant the house was my constant companion. When my husband Leo was home, the silence would retreat, replaced by the sound of the television, his footsteps on the hardwood floors, and the low hum of his voice on the phone. But those times were becoming rarer. As an airline pilot, Leo's job was to leave, and lately it felt like he was excelling at it. Our 10-year marriage had started in the clouds, both literally and figuratively. I met him on a flight to see my parents. He was the handsome, charismatic pilot who made an announcement over the intercom and somehow managed to make standard FAA regulations sound like poetry. We had a whirlwind romance and got married a year later. I knew what I was signing up for: a life of unpredictable schedules, missed holidays, and solo dinners. In the beginning, it was romantic. His absences made his homecomings feel like cinematic reunions. But a decade is a long time, and the romance had slowly been eroded by reality, leaving behind a foundation of loneliness I couldn't seem to fill. The first crack appeared on our 7th anniversary. Leo was scheduled for a 4-day trip to Europe. He promised he'd be back the morning of our anniversary and had made dinner reservations at our favorite restaurant. I spent the day preparing, buying a new dress, and getting my hair done, my stomach fluttering with the same excitement I'd felt when we were dating. But then the text came: flight delayed, mechanical issues, won't make it tonight, so sorry, happy anniversary, love. I understood, of course, it was his job. I ate a slice of the anniversary cake I'd bought, sitting alone at our large dining table, the two-place settings mocking me. The next day, I saw a picture posted by one of the flight attendants on his regular crew. It was a group photo of them at a pub in London, dated the night of our anniversary. Leo was in the back, a wide, carefree grin on his face, a pint of beer in his hand. There were no mechanical issues. He just chose to be there instead of rushing home to be with me. When I asked him about it, he was slick, explaining the flight was postponed until the next morning, so the crew decided to grab a bite. He made me feel crazy for even questioning it. Then there was the incident with my gallery show. I had been working for months on a series of digital prints, and a local gallery had offered me a spot in their emerging artist showcase. It was the biggest moment of my professional life. The opening night was planned 2 months in advance. Leo swore he had blocked off the dates and that nothing would make him miss it. He was my biggest supporter, he always said. The week before the show, he came to me with a somber look on his face. "Sadie, I am so sorry," he began, and I knew what was coming. "A senior pilot called in sick. They need me to cover a flight to Tokyo. It's a huge deal, an international route I've been trying to get. I can't say no." The disappointment was a physical ache in my chest, but I smiled and told him I understood. I stood alone at my showcase, smiling and shaking hands, telling everyone who asked that my wonderful husband was so proud of me but had been called away for an important work trip. I later found out from his colleague's wife that Leo had volunteered for that flight. He hadn't been asked, he had actively sought it out. The loneliness became a quiet desperation. Our conversations grew shorter, more transactional. "Did you pay the electric bill? Don't forget to take out the trash on Tuesday." The man I married, the one who could talk for hours about the constellations he saw from the cockpit, was gone. In his place was a polite, distant roommate who happened to share my bed a few nights a month. I missed him, I missed us. I spent my nights scrolling through articles about reigniting passion and saving a marriage. That's where I found the idea. It was risky, controversial, and completely out of character for me, but the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like a brilliant, last-ditch effort to shock our marriage back to life. The idea was a hall pass, a single, sanctioned opportunity to step outside the marriage with the goal of realizing what we valued within it. I thought, if we could confront the distance head-on with brutal honesty, we could find our way back to each other. I imagined us discussing it, being vulnerable, and ultimately deciding we only wanted each other. I thought it would be a catalyst for connection. I had no idea it would be the key that unlocked a door I never knew existed, revealing a nightmare that was already in progress. I decided to bring it up on a rare Saturday night when Leo was home. He had just returned from a 3-day trip and was in a relaxed, affable mood. I made his favorite meal, pasta carbonara, and we opened a bottle of the expensive wine we'd been saving. I wanted the atmosphere to be perfect, calm, intimate, and safe. My heart hammered against my ribs as I tried to find the right words. How do you ask your husband of 10 years for permission to be with someone else, even if it's just a theoretical exercise? Leo, I started, my voice trembling slightly. I cleared my throat and tried again. Can we talk about something about us? He looked up from his pasta, his expression neutral. Sure, everything okay. Everything's fine, I lied. It's just, you're away so much, and I get lonely, I know you do too. It feels like we're living separate lives sometimes, and I worry that we're drifting apart. He sighed, putting his fork down. It was a weary sound I'd heard many times before. Sadie, we've talked about this. It's my job. It's not forever. In a few years, I'll have the seniority to pick my roots, and it'll be better. I know, I said quickly, not wanting to slip into our usual circular argument. I'm not blaming you, I was just thinking. Maybe we need to try something different, something bold to remind us of what we have. I took a deep breath. I was reading this article about modern relationships. It mentioned this concept of a hall pass, a one-time only, no questions asked permission slip to, you know. I trailed off, feeling foolish. Leo stared at me, his head tilted. He didn't look shocked or angry. He looked curious, like I'd just proposed a new vacation spot. A hall pass, he repeated, a slow smile spreading across his face. Are you serious? I am, I said, gaining a little confidence from his calm reaction. I thought it could be a way for us to be completely honest about the temptations and the distance. We set ground rules, we do it, and then we come back to each other knowing we made a conscious choice to be here, to prove that our bond is stronger than a single night with a stranger. I had a whole speech prepared. I was ready to defend the idea, to explain my complex emotional reasoning, to debate the pros and cons for hours. I expected him to be hesitant, maybe even hurt. I expected a long, difficult conversation. What I got was a shrug and a simple, immediate answer. Okay, he said, picking up his wine glass, I'm in. I was so stunned I couldn't speak. Okay, just okay. Yeah, why not, he said, taking a sip of wine. It could be interesting. What are the rules? The ease of his acceptance was a splash of ice water in my face. There was no hesitation, no emotional turmoil, no, but Sadie, I only want you. He jumped at the idea like a man who had been waiting for a starting gun to go off. My carefully constructed fantasy of a tearful, bonding conversation evaporated, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Well, I stammered, trying to regain my footing. The rules would be, it's just one time, one trip, no emotional attachments, and we don't ask for details afterward, we just move on together. Sounds fair, he said, nodding. He was already looking at the calendar on his phone. I have a 4-day layover in Hawaii next month, a resort in Maui. That could be a good time for me. What about you? My stomach twisted. He already had a place and time. It was too convenient. I don't know, Leo. I haven't thought that far ahead. I don't even have anyone in mind. This was more of a theoretical idea to get us talking. Well, now it's a practical idea, he said, his tone cheerful. Don't worry about me. I'll be respectful. It's just a bit of fun, right? Like you said, to spice things up. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. His touch felt foreign, clinical. This is a great idea, Sadie. It shows how much you trust me. It shows how strong we are. The rest of the dinner was a blur. Leo was more animated than he'd been in years, talking about his upcoming schedule and asking me about my design projects with a feigned interest that now felt insulting. I nodded and smiled, my mind racing. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He wasn't supposed to be so happy about it. The man who was supposed to be my partner in life had just eagerly agreed to be with another woman, and my gut was screaming that something was terribly wrong. The seed of suspicion wasn't just planted. It felt like it had been dropped onto fertile soil and was already sprouting thorny vines arrow. Lend my heart. In the days that followed our conversation, Leo was a changed man. He was attentive, complimentary, and affectionate in a way he hadn't been for years. He'd bring me coffee in the morning and text me, "I love you," from whatever time zone he was in. On the surface, it should have been wonderful. It was everything I had been craving, but it all felt hollow, like a performance. He was acting like a man who was grateful, but my intuition told me he was acting like a man who had gotten away with something. The suspicion I felt that night at dinner began to fester. His easy acceptance of the hall pass replayed in my mind constantly. It wasn't the reaction of a faithful husband reluctantly exploring a modern relationship theory. It was the reaction of a man being handed a get-out-of-jail-free card for a crime he was already committing. I started watching him more closely, noticing little things that I had previously dismissed. He was more protective of his phone, angling it away from me whenever he texted. He cleared his browser history on his laptop religiously, something he never used to bother with. I felt like I was going crazy, caught between the desire to believe in the new, improved Leo and the gnawing feeling that I was being played for a fool. I needed proof. I needed something concrete to either confirm my fears or put them to rest for good. The opportunity came one afternoon when Leo was out running errands. He'd left his personal tablet, a device we often shared, on the kitchen counter. He used it mostly for reading news and watching movies during his layovers. My heart pounded as I picked it up. This felt like a betrayal of his trust, but the alternative, living in this state of anxious uncertainty, felt worse. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I opened his email first. It was mostly junk mail and flight alerts from his airline, nothing incriminating. I checked his photos. There were plenty of pictures of sunsets from hotel windows and selfies of him in his pilot uniform, but nothing out of the ordinary. I was about to give up, feeling guilty and ashamed of my snooping, when I saw the open browser tabs. There were about a dozen of them, mostly news sites and sports pages. But one tab caught my eye. The title was Maui Paradise Resort and Spa Booking Confirmation. My blood ran cold. That was the resort he had mentioned for his hall pass trip. I clicked on it, my hand trembling. The confirmation page loaded, and the details were laid out in stark, undeniable black and white. Reservation for Mr. Leo Morgan. Check-in October 12th, check-out October 16th. Room type oceanfront king suite with private lanai. Number of guests 2. 2 guests, my breath hitched in my chest. He had booked a romantic suite for 2 people. My suggestion of a hall pass hadn't been the catalyst for this trip, it had merely been a convenient cover story for a vacation he had already planned with someone else. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning for more information, and then I saw it. Under the special requests section, a single line made my world tilt on its axis. Request for champagne and strawberries to be delivered to the room on the evening of October 13th to celebrate a special occasion. Anniversary. An anniversary? Our anniversary was in May. October 13th meant nothing to us, but it clearly meant something to him and his mysterious second guest. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The sudden attentiveness, the eagerness to agree to the hall pass, the pre-selected destination, it was all a lie. A carefully orchestrated deception to make me his wife, an unwitting accomplice in his affair. But there was more. I noticed another open tab, this one for the airline's internal scheduling portal. Leo must have forgotten to close it. Curiosity and a desperate need for the whole truth propelled me. I navigated to the crew manifests for his upcoming flights. His trip to Hawaii on October 12th was listed. I clicked on the crew details. Pilot Leo Morgan, co-pilot David Chen, and then the flight attendant roster. My eyes scanned the names, and one jumped out at me. Isabelle Dubois. Isabelle, a name Leo had mentioned a few times in passing. Isabelle is great, one of the best flight attendants on the team, he'd said once. She really knows how to handle difficult passengers. She was younger, in her early 30s, and from the one photo I'd seen on a crew Christmas card, she was stunning. I did a quick search for her name on social media. Her profile was public. Her pictures were full of exotic locations, bright smiles, and group shots with her flight crew. And there, in several photos, was Leo. They were standing a little too close, sharing a private joke, their body language screaming an intimacy that went far beyond professional colleagues. One photo, posted 6 months ago, was just the two of them at a cafe in Paris. The caption read, "Some trips are more memorable." Than others, 6 months. The affair had been going on for at least 6 months. The tablet slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the counter. I sank into a kitchen chair, the confirmation page burning in my mind. He wasn't just having an affair. He and his mistress were planning a romantic anniversary trip, and they were going to let me think it was my idea. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. They weren't just betraying me, they were mocking me. In that moment, the heartbreak and the shock began to curdle into something else, something cold and hard and sharp. It was rage. And with that rage came a new, chilling clarity. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront him and have him lie his way out of it. I was going to Hawaii. Booking my own flight to Hawaii felt like an out-of-body experience. Every click of the mouse, every digit of my credit card number I entered felt both surreal and deeply intentional. I found a flight that would land a few hours before Leo's. I booked a standard room at the same Maui Paradise Resort and Spa, making sure to request a room in a different wing, far from the oceanfront king's suite he had reserved for his romantic rendezvous. I packed a small suitcase with nondescript clothing, dark colors, sunglasses, a wide-brimmed hat. I was no longer Sadie, the loving wife. I was an operative on a mission, fueled by a glacial fury that had numbed the initial searing pain of betrayal. The flight to Maui was the longest 8 hours of my life. I sat by the window, staring out at the endless expanse of the Pacific Ocean, feeling just as vast and empty. Other passengers were laughing, excited for their vacations. Families were corralling their children, and couples were holding hands, their heads resting on each other's shoulders. I was an island of silent misery in a sea of happiness. With every mile we flew, my resolve hardened. The woman who had tearfully eaten anniversary cake alone was gone. The woman who had stood proudly by herself at her art show was gone. In their place was a woman who had been pushed too far, a woman who was about to witness the full scope of her husband's deceit with her own eyes. I checked into the resort under my maiden name. The lobby was beautiful, open air with a view of the sparkling ocean, lush tropical plants, and the gentle sound of a nearby waterfall. It was a place designed for romance, a paradise meant for people in love. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. My room was simple, but it had a small balcony that overlooked the sprawling resort grounds. It was the perfect vantage point. I knew from the airline portal that Leo's flight was due to land at 3:15 p.m. At around 4:30 p.m., I positioned myself on my balcony, a pair of binoculars in hand. The resort entrance was visible from my angle. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Part of me, a small, foolish part, still hoped I was wrong. Maybe the second guest was a male co-pilot. Maybe the anniversary was an inside joke. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything. Then at 4:47 p.m., a taxi pulled up to the curb. The door opened and Leo stepped out, dressed in casual linen pants and a light blue shirt. He looked relaxed, happy, and handsome. My breath caught, and then she stepped out from the other side, Isabel. She was even more beautiful in person, tall and slender, with long, dark hair that cascaded over her shoulders. She was laughing, her head thrown back, as Leo paid the driver. He turned, and his smile as he looked at her was a punch to the gut. It was a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. A genuine, unguarded expression of pure adoration. He slung an arm around her shoulder, pulling her close as they walked towards the hotel entrance. They moved together with an easy, practiced familiarity. This wasn't a first-time fling. This was a well-established couple. They disappeared into the lobby to check in, and I lowered my binoculars, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold them. The small, foolish hope I had been clinging to was extinguished, leaving behind nothing but the cold, hard ash of certainty. Seeing them together, so happy and carefree, was a different kind of pain than finding the digital proof. This was real. This was happening. My husband, the man I had spent a decade of my life loving, was checking into a romantic resort with another woman under the guise of a hall pass I had naively provided. I stayed on the balcony for a long time, watching the sun begin its slow descent towards the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant strokes of orange and pink. It was a beautiful sunset, the kind people travel thousands of miles to see, but I saw none of its beauty. All I could see was the image of Leo and Isabel laughing together, walking into paradise while I watched from the shadows. The plan had been to catch them, but now that I was here, a new objective began to form in my mind. It wasn't enough to see it, I had To hear it, I had to know the full extent of their deception. I had to hear it from their own mouths, and I knew just how I was going to do it. The next day was October 13th, their special occasion, their anniversary. The thought was a constant, throbbing ache behind my eyes. I spent the day like a ghost, haunting the edges of the resort. I saw them from a distance at the pool, lounging on side-by-side chairs, her hand casually resting on his leg. I saw them stroll hand in hand along the beach. Every shared smile, every casual touch was another small cut to my already bleeding heart. They were living out the honeymoon I never had, a carefree fantasy built on a foundation of my pain. From the booking confirmation, I knew they had dinner reservations at 8:00 p.m. at the resort's fanciest restaurant, a cliffside establishment with panoramic ocean views. At 7:30 p.m., I went to the restaurant's adjoining bar. It was dimly lit and elegant, with a few secluded booths that offered both privacy and a good view of the restaurant entrance. I chose a dark corner booth, ordered a club soda, and waited. My phone was on the table, the voice memo app open and ready. My plan was simple and risky. I just had to hope they would choose the bar for a pre-dinner drink. At 7:50 p.m., they walked in. They were dressed up. Leo was in a crisp white shirt and dark trousers, and Isabel wore a stunning, form-fitting red dress. They looked like a power couple, a perfect pair. They scanned the bar, and for a terrifying second, I thought Leo's eyes met mine. But he looked right through me, his focus landing on an empty table near the window not far from my booth. My gamble had paid off. They sat down, their backs partially to me, and ordered a bottle of champagne. The waiter popped the cork, and the celebratory sound echoed the pounding in my ears. Leo filled their glasses and raised his. I pressed record on my phone. "Happy anniversary, my love," Leo said, his voice low and intimate. "Happy 6 months," Isabel replied, her voice smooth as silk. "I can't believe it's been that long already." "Best 6 months of my life," he said, and they clinked their glasses. I felt a wave of nausea. He was toasting the affair that had been running parallel to my lonely existence. Isabel took a sip of champagne and laughed, a light tinkling sound. "I still can't believe this worked. This is the most beautiful resort, and to think we have Sadie to thank for it." The sound of my own name from her lips sent a jolt of ice through my veins. Leo chuckled. It was a deep, contented sound. "I know, when she suggested the hall pass, I almost couldn't keep a straight face. I thought you were going to have to kick me under the table." "I almost did, the look on your face. It was like a kid on Christmas morning," Isabel said, her voice full of amusement. "Did she really think that was her idea?" "Completely," Leo said, pride evident in his tone. "She's been so mopey lately, going on about us drifting apart. I think she read some self-help article and cooked up this whole dramatic, let's be honest with each other plan. It was perfect. I didn't have to lie about where I was going. I didn't have to hide anything. She literally packed my bag for me." They both laughed. It was a shared, cruel sound that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. They were laughing at me, at my pain, my desperation, my foolish, trusting heart. They were laughing about how stupid I was. "She is a little naive, isn't she?" Isabel mused, swirling the champagne in her glass. "A little too trusting. Does she ever suspect anything?" "Never," Leo said with absolute confidence. "She thinks my job is just stressful. She buys every excuse I give her. The mechanical delays, the last-minute schedule changes. She believes it all. She lives in her own little world with her art projects. It's almost sad." "Don't feel too sad," Isabel said, reaching across the table to place her hand on his. "Her little world is what allows us to have this one." "To us," Leo said, raising his glass again, "and to my very understanding, very clueless wife, may she continue to be the perfect cover story." I couldn't listen to any more. I pressed stop on the recording, my whole body trembling with a rage so pure and cold it felt like a physical force. The pain was still there, but it was now encased in a thick shell of ice. They hadn't just betrayed me, they had reveled in it. They had toasted to my ignorance and laughed at my love. The man I had married was not just an adulterer, he was a monster. And his companion was just as vile. I slid out of the booth, my movements stiff and robotic. I walked out of the bar, past the host stand, and into the warm Hawaiian night. I didn't look back. The sound of their laughter followed me, but it no longer had the power to wound me. It was now just evidence. It was the fuel I needed for the storm that was coming, they thought I was. Naive and clueless, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. The flight home was the complete opposite of my journey to Hawaii. The anxiety and dread were gone, replaced by a strange, unnerving calm. The rage was still there, but it was no longer a raging fire. It was a block of solid ice in the center of my chest. I had my evidence. The booking confirmation for two, the timeline of their 6-month affair pieced together from social media. And the crown jewel, a crystal-clear 12-minute audio recording of my husband and his mistress toasting to my stupidity. When I landed, I went home to our empty, silent house. But the silence felt different now. It was no longer a symbol of my loneliness. It was the quiet of a battlefield before the first shot is fired. It was my strategic advantage. Leo was due back in 2 days. In that time, I moved with a methodical, detached precision that would have surprised even me. I downloaded the audio file from my phone and saved it to a secure cloud drive. I made a transcript of the most damning parts of their conversation. I took screenshots of the hotel confirmation and Isabel's incriminating social media posts. I compiled it all into a single, neat folder on my laptop, a digital portfolio of my husband's treachery. Then I began to plan the exposure. A simple confrontation was out of the question. He didn't deserve the privacy of a one-on-one fight where he could twist words and gaslight me. He and Isabel had laughed at me. They had mocked my role as his wife. His family, especially his parents, had always been part of the problem, propping up the myth of their perfect son and his perfect marriage. They adored Leo and viewed me as the lucky woman who got to be a part of his incredible life. They needed to see the real Leo, the man I had discovered. Leo's mother, Carol, called me the day before he was due to return. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "Sadie, dear, we are just so excited to have Leo back. His father and I want to host a little welcome home dinner for him tomorrow night, just family to celebrate him." It was as if the universe was handing me the stage I needed on a silver platter. "That's a wonderful idea, Carol," I said, my voice perfectly level. "He'll be so thrilled. What time?" 7 o'clock, don't you worry about a thing, dear. I'll handle all the food, you just bring yourself and your handsome husband. We'll be there, I said. And Carol, thank you, it means so much that you do these things for him, he's a very special man. Oh, we know, she gushed, we're so proud, see you tomorrow. After I hung up, I allowed myself a small, bitter smile. A welcome home party, how fitting. I spent the rest of the day preparing for my own departure. I methodically went through the house, separating my belongings. I packed my clothes, my books, my art supplies. I contacted a divorce lawyer I found online and scheduled a consultation for the following week. I opened a new bank account and transferred half of our joint savings into it, the half I had earned with my own freelance work over the years. Each action was a quiet declaration of independence. I was dismantling our life together before he even knew it was over. When Leo walked through the door the next afternoon, he was the picture of a happy, relaxed man returning from a trip. He dropped his bags and pulled me into a hug, kissing the top of my head. "I missed you," he said. The casual lie, the easy affection, no longer hurt me. It was like watching a scene from a movie where I already knew the ending. I hugged him back, a gesture that felt utterly empty. "I missed you too," I replied, my voice a perfect imitation of a loving wife. "How was the trip?" "Good, good," he said, pulling away. "Relaxing, but it's so good to be home." He handed me a small box. "I brought you something." Inside was a delicate necklace with a plumeria charm, the flower of Hawaii, a souvenir from his romantic getaway with his mistress. The audacity was stunning. "And it's beautiful, Leo," I said, forcing a smile. "Thank you." "My mom called, by the way," he said, heading for the shower. "She's having a dinner for me tonight, hope you're up for it." "Of course," I called after him, "I wouldn't miss it for the world." As the water started running, I looked at the necklace in my hand. It was a perfect symbol of his deceit, pretty on the outside, but rooted in ugliness and lies. I placed it on the counter next to my car keys and a small, powerful Bluetooth speaker I had just purchased. Everything was in place. The audience was gathered, the stage was set, and the star of the show had no idea he was about to give the performance of a lifetime. We arrived at Leo's parents' house at 7 o'clock sharp. The scene was exactly as I had pictured. His mother, Carol, fussed over him, patting his cheek and telling him how handsome he looked. His father, Frank, clapped him on the back, asking about the flight. His young. Our sister, Chloe, and her husband were there too. They all treated Leo like a returning hero. I was a background character in the play of their perfect family, smiling politely and accepting Carol's air kisses. In my purse, I clutched the small Bluetooth speaker. It felt as heavy as a stone. Dinner was a masterclass in Leo's charm. He regaled them with sanitized stories from his trip, carefully omitting his travel companion. He talked about the beautiful beaches and the relaxing atmosphere. At one point, he looked at me across the table and said, "We should go together sometime, Sadie, you'd love it." "I'm sure I would," I replied, my voice smooth as glass. As Carol brought out the dessert, a lavish chocolate cake, she tapped her glass with a spoon. "A toast," she announced, beaming, "to my wonderful son, Leo. A top pilot, a loving husband, and a man who makes his family proud every single day. We love you, son." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Leo," they chorused. Leo soaked it all in, a humble, grateful smile on his face. This was my cue. "I'd like to make a toast, too," I said, my voice cutting through the cheerful chatter. Everyone turned to look at me surprised. I was usually quiet at these gatherings. I stood up holding my water glass. "I want to second what Carol said. Leo is indeed a very special man, and as his wife, I've had a front row seat to his dedication. In fact, he's so dedicated, he even finds time for anniversaries I didn't know we had." A confused silence fell over the table. Leo's smile tightened. "Sadie, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about your trip," I said, my gaze locked on his. "The Hall Pass trip, the one that was my idea. You see, I was so proud of our honest and modern marriage that I wanted to share it. I actually brought something to play for you all, a little audio souvenir." Before anyone could react, I took the speaker out of my purse, placed it in the middle of the table, and pressed play. The hushed, intimate sounds of the bar filled the dining room, and then Leo's voice, clear as day, "Happy anniversary, my love." Isabel's voice followed, "Happy 6 months." I watched Leo's face, the color drained from it, replaced by a ghastly, pale shock. His eyes darted around the table, a cornered animal looking for an escape. Carol's smile froze and then crumbled. Frank's jaw went slack. The recording continued. They heard Leo mocking my mopey behavior. They heard Isabel call me naive. They heard them laugh, that cruel, shared laugh that was seared into my memory. And then came the final, devastating lines. "To us," Leo's recorded voice said, "and to my very understanding, very clueless wife, may she continue to be the perfect cover story." I pressed stop. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. No one moved, no one breathed. I looked directly at Leo. The mask of the charming, perfect son was gone. All that was left was a pale, terrified man. "So a toast," I said, my voice cold and steady as I raised my glass. "To Leo, and to his 6-month anniversary with Isabel, and to me, your clueless wife who apparently makes a great cover story." I took a sip of water and placed the glass down with a soft click. And Carol was the first to speak, her voice a horrified whisper. "Leo, is this true?" Leo opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just stared at me, his eyes pleading. But there was no mercy left in my heart. "It's all true," I said, answering for him. I stood up and placed my napkin on the table. "My bags are packed. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I transferred my half of the savings this morning. The necklace you gave me is on the kitchen counter. You can give it to Isabel. I believe it was meant for her anyway." I turned to his stunned family. "Thank you for dinner. It's been illuminating." With that, I turned and walked out of the dining room, out of the house, and out of the lie that had been my life. I didn't run. I walked with my head held high, the sound of the silence I left behind more satisfying than any screaming match could ever have been. As I got into my car and drove away, I didn't look back. I was driving toward an unknown future, but for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't lonely. I was free. So, to anyone out there who feels that same heavy silence I once did, who feels like a background character in their own life, I have to ask, what would you have done? Would you have confronted him in private, or was a public exposure the only way to reclaim the truth?